we are live. Sorry. Okay.
No worries.
You can
I was just
continue.
saying that Notion
This
just
is good
stopped working.
feedback.
Yeah, I mean, just stopped working. On Chrome actually, and I'm just for the first time I'm using Firefox, and it's really frustrating. And now I wanted to open to show. Actually, I would run this on. Sorry for the rant, but I would run this on Firefox, and then I open Riverside, and it says that we don't run on this browser, and like you have to go back to to Chrome, and I'm like, okay, that's great. You know, Hello everyone. This is George from Minusia. I have Milica, our content lead, and Zach, our managing director. Zach, when you give me a nudge that everything is okay with the live stream, I are we okay? Are we good?
Yes, we are
Okay,
live.
okay, that's good. So today we are discussing self-promotional content. And any opening remarks from Milica or Zach regarding what we are going to discuss today? Nope.
Not really, just that I guess this isn't anything new. We've been doing self-promotional content for years, or ever since I came to Minutia, which was like 3 years ago, right? So, but many things are now new regarding that, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and just a quick sort of like side note. Obviously, this is not the only thing we do, right? And lately, we've also, I think, started introducing some new ways to approach self-promotional content. And so I would like to begin by sharing my screen with you. I don't know what I can share here, but let's try.
Yeah, and just
Okay, so
to add a note here before you start sharing your skin, George,
yeah,
I want to say that regarding this topic about self-promotional listicles, there have been many different discussions around that, and I mean, even most recently, around the end of the year, on 2025, there was a Google update about that it was affecting, let's say, the self-promotional listicles massively, and because that was the main play for some software companies, that is something that actually started getting more traction and interest about most SEOs and content professionals in general. And on top of that, I would say that in a different direction, many agencies are actually, including us, and this is actually not the only thing that we are doing, definitely, but this is part of the mix of the content that we're using and suggesting. And if someone is on LinkedIn or YouTube and is watching us now, most likely they will have seen many content, let's say, LinkedIn posts and blog posts around self-promotional listicles, its effectiveness, why you should include the, let's say, queries with commercial search intent into your strategies and so on. So this is increasingly important nowadays. And this is the premise, let's say, of the whole discussion that we have today.
thank you, Zach. So I will start here. Okay, it works. That's good. I will start here. So a few weeks ago, when was it? April. Oh, so a couple of months now. I published this piece of content on my newsletter. If you try to read it, it's gated, which means that you need to become a Growthways Pro member. Sorry, but and so I published this piece on self-promotional content, and more specifically listicles. But it's not just listicles, right? It's comparison guides like product A vs product B. It's obviously alternative listicles like product alternatives, and here you can also have the singular form as an alternative, which is going to be to a certain solution, which is going to be a landing page. And then you have all these software category listicles, right? So for example, best project management tools and so on and so forth. But that's not, you know as I said earlier, we've sort of like started experimenting with other self-promotional content formats lately, particularly within the context of AI search, right? And our team at Minusia is doing a fantastic job at incorporating those in the strategies we build for our clients. And so I published this piece of content here, and even though I mean I the I use the word listicle, you can assume like that we talk about any kind of format, and you know format that falls under that category of self-promotional content. And so how do we got here? This is mostly important for B2B and like B2B software companies, but since we are working with all sorts of brands at Minusia, specializing in B2B SaaS, sure, but we have experience with other like areas outside of B2B SaaS. That becomes relevant for pretty much every business, both brick and mortar and digital first. So how do we got here? First of all, we have to keep in mind that commercial intent is high, and so these pieces of content have commercial value. Okay, so it's no surprise that self-promotional content has been used and widely used and abused, obviously, by B2B software companies and B2B companies more broadly. Then you have review sites and affiliates that sort of like build their business model on top of self-promotional content, which is in their case not exactly self-promotional because they're not promoting themselves, but they are promoting other solutions, right? And so you have that. Um, Unfortunately, the barrier to entry was almost zero. Um, it gets tougher, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to discuss today. But unfortunately, Notion, my Notion doesn't work on Chrome anymore since yesterday, so I can't share our SOP with you. Sorry about that. But um, the barrier to entry was almost zero, meaning that it was quote unquote easy to create these pieces of content, right? Unfortunately, the crowd mentality kicked in, and as it often happens in marketing, the law of shitty click-throughs in full play. Even though I don't necessarily think that we've reached the peak and sort of like are in the um, era of like diminishing returns yet, but like everyone and their dog started. Militza is going to like it. Started doing self-promotional content, right? And it's so interesting because you would see even like brands that were not relevant really to that like listicle they were publishing, or I mean the product and like what they were doing as a business was not relevant at all, and they would still do these pieces of content, right? Which is I'm assuming that someone advised that, either an in-house employee or an agency, a freelancer, consultant, doesn't matter. But I'm really wondering what was the purpose of like these strategies, right? uh, and lastly and importantly, let's not forget that it worked, right? And it still works, right? Which is why we are discussing it, which is why so many people are interested in this topic, and why now with the changes that like started happening, we feel the need to like start communicating more our thoughts and approach around self-promotional content. Before I move on to the next section, Milica, or Zach or Rinor, who joined us, do you have anything to add? Nope. So There are a few ways, that companies sort of like gamed the system or tried to game the system. The first one was, which was, you know, credit here to Lily Ray for raising this. The fact that they started using fabricated rating systems on self-promotional content pages. Needless to say, that's not something you should, do. And in fact, I highly recommend that you go and check, those pages for, fake schema and fake ratings. The second point is structured data abuse, right? Not just ratings, but also structured data, right? And so that's another thing that you know surfaced as was surfaced as a problem, as an issue around this pieces of content. And let's not forget, AI and the fact that many companies thought that it would be wise to scale this particular, content type up with the use of AI. And you don't need me to tell you what happens when use AI to scale things up, especially when you don't have rigorous and well-established editorial processes and so on and so forth. Okay, great. Until December 2025, when Google rolled out a core update, which was fully released in January. It usually takes a few weeks for an update to sort of like fully uh, sort of sort of like permeate the system, right? And um, following that update, many websites were like affected, right? Um, and I would like to give an example, show an example, because I don't want this to sort of like form a perception about whether we should be doing self-promotional content, we shouldn't be doing it. In my view, and I know many people like from this industry may be disagreeing, like may disagree with me here, but you should definitely do self-promotional content, but you should do it in a way that respects your business model, right? And I will explain. um, and definitely by incorporating some best practices, we will mention just a couple of those um, that we started incorporating in our like processes, and have started communicating with our clients. um, and so the example is Connect Team, right, which is um, an employee management slash productivity software as a service, right? Um, and as you can see here, like things were going really well until the end of last year, really, um, because following the core update back in December 2025, um, traffic has started declining, and it's not just Google traffic, that old dusty SEO thing, right? It's also AI search visibility, because this is one of these things that, and there are, we can debate all day long, but in my view, it makes sense why losing visibility in Google search results in loss in visibility in AI search, right? um, but why is the issue, like, they did self promotional content, so what, right? Other companies have like done that too before them. The problem is that they did it to such an extent that essentially went against their business model. Their business model, by the way, is, and I wrote posts about it. We also did an analysis of them, of Connecting a few months ago. But if you take a look at their sitemaps, and by the way, we did the analysis. You don't have to do that, but they have a lot of self-promotional content. In fact, um, I mean, this is just, I'm searching for alternatives here, and you can see, what's going on. Like I get 67 results just for the word alternative, right? The qualifier alternative, right? Overall, we counted over 500 like pieces that could be labeled as self-promotional on their website. And remember, they are software as a service. They make money by getting people, users, to pay for their like for their product basically. They are not a review site, which means that their content strategy in this case, which obviously served their like SEO and AO strategy, uh, went against their business model because they don't monetize. They obviously monetize through some of these pieces, but they are not G2, Capterra, and GetUp, and so on and so forth. In other words, their business model is making money from users who pay for their product, not from reviews and like buyers who are searching for software suggestions and so on and so forth, right? And I would like to tie that back to the one of the main premises of this sort of like live stream. And I think that I'm going to say in general, like we are aligned and on the same page as to how we feel about that. Is that no one said don't do self-promotional content. You should definitely do it, but keep it at a level that's not going to put your website and your long-term ability to sort of like grow, will not compromise that. And never do anything that goes against your business model. Okay. um and so let me see if I have yeah. And so that's that. Does anyone have anything to share? Say Milica or Rinor, Zach. I don't know if any of you uh, have anything.
Not so
Nope.
far, George. I mean,
Yeah.
No, not
Yeah.
until we talk about ways to correct this.
yeah.
Yeah. And so listicles are not inherently bad, as I try to explain. And that's one of the things that we say to our clients, that just because these certain websites are getting hit doesn't mean that like we shouldn't be doing that, right? um, it does mean though that we should be way more careful. Okay. um, One thing I would like to add here is that it seems that um, you know in general, UGC that is centered um, to helping buyers make decisions is winning in AI search, which is why you see companies such as Trustpilot, perform better in AI search and whatnot, right? And one final dimension I would like to add here is the fact that there always have been, but depending on where your business operates, where you have like legal entities and whatnot, there's also a legal or like legal considerations here as to when it comes to like self promotional content. Okay. Which is why you need to start taking that seriously. Okay. Oh, so we have some of the guardrails we use at Minusia. That's great. Melissa, I guess like you can chip in here because like you see the and review the content that sort of like comes out of Minusia, and you have like extensive experience with among many other things with this type of content. So whenever you want, you can just like you know um, add commentary and color to the things I'm sharing. So a few things that like we would like to share as sort of like guardrails or best practices, if you will. The first would be to disclose excuse me, your bias upfront, which is to say, how can you do that? You can include a visible disclaimer at the top, who you are, that your product is in the comparison, and when the piece was last updated. Anything to add, Milica?
Yeah, so this is a new practice here. I would just like to say in general, at Minutia, when we produced self-promotional listicles in the past, we always aimed for transparency and authenticity or honesty, right? It was never our goal to sort of put down competitors of our clients, nor was it the goal of our clients either. So some of these practices we've been doing since forever, but some of these are new, and these very explicit disclosures are a new thing that we hadn't really implemented before.
Yeah.
And so disclosing your bias, but we actually have like a lengthy paragraph that we include typically underneath the introduction, so right at the start of a piece, where we say all of these like, this is the company is included in the list, what it does, what it offers, the date the piece was reviewed or updated, that this is not an independent editorial review, because we typically do have numbers, but it is not a ranking system, etc. So we add things like that just to be safer now, I guess.
Yes, that's right. The second point, guardrail best practice, is to use first person plural, not third person. Meaning, when you like describe your own product or service, talk as we, like we are included, we do it like that, and so on and so forth. Because third person language creates the illusion of independent editorial review, as Milica mentioned. Milica, anything to add here?
No, just that sometimes I understand, or we understand, that it goes against the editorial guidelines of the client or the blog in general to talk in first person.
Yeah.
So in that case, we don't. But given that we implement all the other elements of these sort of like guardrails, I think we're okay anyway.
Okay, thank you. um, the other two are hand in hand as I see it. The first is no proprietary rating systems, meaning if you can't explain and reproduce the scoring methodology, I would advise that you scrap any proprietary rating systems altogether. If not, then be ready to explain what's your scoring methodology, right? Is it a mix of reviews and features and like whatever it might be? You have to be very explicit. You have to have a disclaimer essentially to explain how did you come up with this rating, right, on the page. And then no fake schema markup, particularly as we saw earlier, um, review schema, right? um, anything to add here, Rinor or Milica? The next one, sorry, Rinor, would you like to say something?
Nothing on my side, actually.
Okay. The next one would be to avoid absolute claims. And this is a tricky one, right? Because, when you are, like when you create a piece on the best tools in a certain category, right? How can you not add the best qualifier, at least in the title, if not in the URL slug, right? Um, it's difficult, but um, on the page, making claims about, especially when you try to present yourself as the best, right? And I know that many brands, many companies have that even in their sort of like homepage and so on and so forth, like the number one, the best, the top, based on like what criteria, right? In general, if it's a listicle, you could, use, like the word best or top and so on. But if it's like an alternative an alternative to landing page, for example, and you are like portraying or communicating yourself as the best alternative to X, you might want to tone that down. Okay, in general, avoid absolute claims unless you are very explicit about best based on what, like your definition of best essentially. Okay. um, The next one is align with your core offering. Comparison content should cover categories where you actually compete And that's actually one of the mistakes that Connect team did. They created self-promotional content for all sorts of things that were not as relevant to like their core offering, the capabilities of their product, let alone the business model, as we explained, right? um, I know it's tough, but give competitors a fair treatment, right? And one way you could do this, I know it's difficult, but you could keep section lengths roughly, comparable. And when you need to give credit to like your competitors listed in a self promotional piece, then you should definitely do that, right? And at the same time, when like you have to explain that you may not be the best solution for a certain type of company, or your like feature X is not as refined as one of your competitors, then you need to like state that too, right? Melissa, do you have anything to add here? Because I know that you this is your area. And
Yeah, so I want to say that because when we create these listicles, we include pros and cons section for each. And what we do is we source reviews from publicly available reviews from G2, Capterra, etc. So every pro or con is linked to a verifiable review, existing review on a website. So we're not making anything up. These are actual users of these tools that said this about the tools. So that's one way to ensure. And of course, if you give like 3 pros to your own tool, then you have to list 3 pros for the competitors as well. If you list 2 or 3 cons, you have to list 2 or 3 cons for competitors as well. You cannot have an unfair word count for your own tool, as George already mentioned, right?
yes.
Um, and was yes, the only exception here is sometimes a piece, a tool in the list does not have enough pros or cons. And in those cases, we're also very transparent and say, okay, so we couldn't source enough feedback for this tool. Unfortunately, there are no pros or no cons because of that. Yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. um, Next, know the legal environment in your market, right? um, Minutia, as part of our process refinement and whatnot, Minutia is working with a like legal advisor, specifically for the US market, because this is mainly where we like operate, and most of our like business comes from there. But if you are registered somewhere else, or if you have like several entities, then you might want to consult with like a legal expert in each of these sort of like regions. Um, and what I would like to say here is, as a final, note on that um, guardrail, is that the worst thing, I've been doing this for quite a few years now. The worst thing I've ever seen happening with self-promotional content is a cease and desist letter, which you can, most companies reply to by saying that, yeah, but like you like also feature us there, and you misrepresent our brand, and so on and so forth. But even that you can avoid by having very clear disclaimers and following some of the guardrails included in this table. Obviously not legal advice, but definitely better than most of the content that's out there right now, especially for B2B software companies. Second to last, two more to go. um, One would be to share your research methodology, as Milica kind of touched on. And this varies, per client, because you also have different editorial processes and so on and so forth. But especially if, like, for example, if you're using AI for research as a research assistant, or if you like, I don't know, use specific review site, whatever, it's always good to share that this is a disclaimer explaining this is how we went about researching this piece, right? Melissa, anything to add here? I'm sure
Not
I'm,
really, just that we are always very clear. Like we looked at these sites to look for reviews or opinions, etc. We always leave links to all the opinions that we sourced. So I think that's the right way to go.
thank you. And the last one would be to, which is obvious, and I kind of touched on that earlier, to avoid making this your content strategy. Okay. Ahrefs, they published a piece a few months ago on the topic, and in that piece, they stated that they keep comparison content below. That's how they called it, below 0.5% of their total content inventory, right? Um, and so, in that context, I would argue that if you keep it maybe not as low as Ahrefs, but if you keep it like to a normal level, then and you follow some of the other guardrails or all of them that we are sharing here with you today, then I don't see any reason why your website like will be targeted, and why let me stop sharing, and why you will have like any performance issues for your website, and so on and so forth, right? So that's it, I guess, for me for now. I don't think I have anything else, and I'm glad also I found this table with some of the guardrails that we also follow at Minusia. Does anyone have anything else to add before we wrap?
No, just to reinforce maybe one last time that we never had, once we became aware of the issues that these other companies like Connect Team started having with self-promotional listicles, the conversation we had at Minutia was never, should we stop doing them? It was just like, how can we modify our process to ensure that our clients are safe with these new updates? Because as George mentioned at the very beginning, they still work and they still absolutely have to get done. I think even today we got like a comment from a client that they received several leads from an alternative piece or several alternative pieces that we did for them. So they work and they are, they have absolutely have a place in your strategy.
Oh, I missed that comment, but I agree with you
You should visit
100%.
Slack.
Oh yeah, I will. So I agree with you. We are on the same page, and also besides the guardrails and like having a partner who cares about these things, because I think that most agencies like don't have this conversation with their clients right now, or they're just sort of like uh, pretend as if this is not an issue, right? Kicking the can down the road, sort of like situation. We are having these conversations openly. We are proactive, and as I said earlier, there is more there, right? So, like, chances are that if you are like, even if you are working with an agency, you are doing, you are just scratching the surface, especially for what's working in AI search. So, if you want to like see what's out there when it comes to self-promotional content and want to have a partner that knows how to do it right, then you should definitely reach out to us at Minusia, right? And I think that's a great way to close this session. I don't know if you folks agree, but I think I'm good. Like I played my part.
We are good, yes. And I agree with Melitza's comment and you and the one that you made, George. So we can wrap things up. And if anyone is interesting about, let's say, self-promotional listings and how they should approach them well and in a, let's say, manner that actually makes sense for the things that are changing right now, feel free to reach out. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm.